In the early stages of Slick Talk, I remember coming up with a list of topics. I think it was about 10 episodes worth of content. And in delivering this list to folks in and out of the building to get some feedback, I remember a common question was, how are you going to keep this show going for the long haul? After you run out of your list of topics, where's the content going to come from? And I was very confident that the same interaction that we have with our customers just in the course of delivering them their report and them having feedback and follow up, wondering, oh, what other problems can you find? What do these additional elements mean? Here's how oil analysis is so vital in my maintenance plan. I was confident that the same interaction, the same feedback would carry over to the podcast, and it has. So here I have another episode, a Q&A with the analyst, where I've gathered up this feedback, these questions that I've fielded, and I'm going to group them together and answer them. And no matter what capacity you're using oil analysis or what you own that needs oil to do its job, I'm confident that this show will have something for you. We're going to break down questions relating to the differences between aviation, gasoline, diesel engine oils. What role do filter magnets or a magnetic drain plug, what does that have to do with oil analysis? Residual additive, whether or not that will impact your report. How much oil you need to sample. What slips do you need to send in with your oil? And is oil analysis a worthwhile step in a pre-buy or an inspection process? My name is Blackstone Joe. Welcome to Slick Talk. The first question I want to tackle is a customer asked us what the difference is between aviation, gas, and diesel engine oils. And for me, that really comes down to additives primarily, because aviation oils either don't use additive at all, or if they do, it's going to be phosphorus, and that's it. Gasoline, diesel engine oils, they use phosphorus, but they also use molybdenum and boron, calcium, magnesium, zinc. You're going to get all these additives in most gasoline or diesel engine oils. And what's really interesting about that is that a lot of aircraft still have flat tappet engines, yet they don't have a significant amount of phosphorus and zinc. Remember, sometimes they won't even have phosphorus. That's actually pretty common, yet these oils work well. So I think that would come as a surprise to owners of a lot of older flat tappet engines who are consistently being mindful of how much phosphorus and zinc. I think that would surprise a lot of you to find out that, aircraft engines do just fine without this ZDDP, this additive package that so many people think is, going to be the difference in their engines lasting. Even back in 2010, this question was being asked, pretty frequently, to the extent that the president of Blackstone, Ryan Stark, decided to run an experiment on an engine of his own. He decided to run an aircraft oil that had no ZDDP at all. This is in his 84 Chevy with the 350 engine. And guess what? Even after running oil that had no additive at all, the engine's still here. And this wasn't merely one oil run. You can actually read the details of his experiment in that newsletter. It's titled ZDD What? We published this back in November 2010. If you are not familiar, you can find all of our newsletters under the information tab on our website. But read through that breakdown, that experiment he ran, where you can see the results. You can see the wear levels from his engine. He'll show you the oil he ran and even gives an update on what happened next. So you'll see Aeroshell W65 being in use, and as well as the way the engine was wearing with that oil being run. So owners with flat tappet engines, I guess I'll just end this point with a note that you can rest assured that the oil you're running, if it's API certified, it will have the ZDDP that you need. And if you want examples of oils with even no zinc or phosphorus present, oils that worked well in a 350 engine, you'll have exactly that in the newsletter. Go check it out if you're interested. Another question that I fielded recently, but it's pretty frequent, so it never hurts to bring up every now and again. A customer mentioned that they had a filter magnet in place, and they were asking if that is a problem with our analysis. Are we not going to be able to see how the engine is wearing because of a filter magnet being in place and picking up metal from the engine? Filter magnets are useful because they pick up visible pieces of metal. I mean, obviously, if it's magnetic, it's going to be from steel parts. However, our analysis measures metals that are microscopic in size. So the levels of microscopic wear are not going to be skewed. That metal is too small, really, for a filter magnet to have an impact. But visible metal will be collected on a filter magnet. So you're going to want to pay attention to the filter magnet, how much metal it's accumulating, if you have like a magnetic drain plug, so on. Pay attention because that visible metal is not going to be quantified in our analysis, and you can keep an eye on whether that amount that you're finding on the plug or the magnet, whether that is increasing in size, and that's a good thing to keep track of, as well as the microscopic metal that the engine is making. If you're finding a lot of visible metal and we're finding excess wear on a microscopic level, then you have good indication that something is wrong mechanically with especially steel parts when you're talking about magnetic metal that would be accumulating on a plug or a magnet. Moving on, we're going to talk about additives a bit more, this time just a different type. So a customer asked about seafoam. They were mentioning that they had used it in the past and they were wondering if residual seafoam from an oil change or two ago would skew our results. And this one's easy. Seafoam, really anything solvent based, that burns up as the oil reaches operating temp. So when you're sampling, and especially if it's been an oil change or two later, it's not going to skew the results. You don't need to worry about that. If you use something like that, something solvent based directly before you change the oil, then there is a chance that it could lower the flash point. But even then, it's pretty rare to see that result. So if you're using anything akin to seafoam and the engine has warmed up, that additive should burn up as the engine reaches operating temp. And unlike oil additives like, Restore or a Turbomax, for example, which can leave behind elements that we'll find in the spectral results, seafoam isn't one of them. So as that engine warms up, it will burn up and not leave behind unusual elements. It's not going to skew the physical properties. So you can use that, especially when you're talking about a couple of oil changes ago. It's not going to play a role in your analysis. So don't feel like you can't send in the sample. And really, anytime you're wondering whether or not you can send in the sample, just give us a call and we can save you the trouble of wondering. And also, if you're in a situation where you shouldn't be sending in the sample, we can let you know that as well. So give us a call if you're in doubt. You can send an email if you have time to wait for a response as well. In the category of frequently asked questions, we have how much oil do I need for analysis? Our kit has a bottle that is 3.5 ounces, give or take, in capacity. You want to fill that up as much as you can. You don't have to fill it up all the way, but as much as you can. That way we have enough oil not only to run our analysis, but it gives you a little bit of leeway, especially if any of the sample leaks in transit. If we do not have enough oil for every test, that's okay. Usually what will end up happening is, say if you have lost a significant amount of that oil or you're only able to fill like half the bottle, for example, then we probably won't be able to do the flash point, but other tests like the spectral analysis, insolubles, viscosity don't take nearly as much oil. Again, feel free to give us a call if you have doubts about there not being enough oil for us to sample, but please do fill up the jar as much as you can. It helps avoid situations like I mentioned earlier. If any of the bottle leaks in transit, it shouldn't, as long as that cap is screwed up tight. But situations do arise where some of that oil is not where it should be. And also, if you have any doubts about the oil you have, or say you want to inquire about just running one particular test, if you have one sort of question that you need answered and everything else is kind of superfluous in the situation you're in, again, just get in touch. We'll be happy to help as far as estimating, what we can do with the oil you have. But in general, fill up that container. And if you're not in a position where you can fill up our bottle because, say, you don't have our bottle, you can use your own container. So basically, akin to this question is a very similar one that was, what can I use to sample? A customer was asking if they could use Tupperware. Yeah, you can use anything that's clean or dry. Just keep that 3.5 ounce size in mind when you are trying to retrieve a sample and you don't have our kit. It's perfectly fine not to use our kit. It's just handy to have that bottle so you know exactly how much oil. But if you're confident that you can retrieve the amount in another clean and dry container, feel free to do so. And in situations where you don't have even an oil slip that applies to the sample you're taking, don't worry. You can use any of our slips to fill out when you're sending in a sample. It's okay, for example, if you're trying to send in a transmission sample and you don't have a transmission slip, you can use the slip that came with your kit, or you can print off a slip from our website. If you go under the services tab, you can print off whatever oil slip you need and send it with your sample, or you can use a pre-printed slip that you have. If, say, you had a kit in the garage, like I mentioned, transmission or engine or differential or whatever slip you might have. If you don't want to print one off, you can use that. Just be clear and label what it is you're sampling and mention that, hey, I don't have the original kit. This is what I have. It's okay as long as you are clear. And most importantly, we have contact information. So the analyst or whoever is looking at your sample at the time, maybe it's being unpacked and we're logging it in. We want to be able to get in touch if we have any questions about what it is you sampled. So be clear about what it is you sampled, but also make sure to include contact information so we can get a hold of you. And lastly, we had a customer ask if we can use oil analysis in a pre-buy or in an inspection. And the answer is yes, we can. So when it comes to a pre-buy, if you're in a position to retrieve a sample either during an oil change, or if you're able to take a sample from the dipstick without draining the oil, you can do so with a hand pump. You can actually order one off our website if you don't have one of your own. You can send us a sample and we will evaluate the wear metals compared to averages. We'll look at the oil's physical properties as well as any sort of harmful contamination. Me personally, if I were in a position where I was buying a used car, for example, I would want to make sure there's no glaring issues like, say, coolant contamination, and that will stand out in our testing. You can find that in the spectral results based on the presence of potassium and sodium. So use analysis to your advantage when you're in a position where you're trying to buy an aircraft, you're trying to buy a boat or a car, whatever the case may be. Again, you can sample either during an oil change or by taking the oil from the dipstick tube, whatever is most accessible to you. So you can use that analysis not just during your regular maintenance, but you can look for any glaring red flags before you make a purchase. Again, we'll look at wear metals, we'll look at contaminants, and we'll look at the physical properties. It's always important when you're sending in a sample, but it's of, I would say, the utmost importance with a pre-buy to include whatever context you can. For example, if it's an aircraft, tell us about the activity that the engine has seen recently. If you know it's been sitting, let us know, as that can result in signs of corrosion. If you know of recent repairs, maybe the last owner has done an overhaul, or if you switch gears and talk about automotive, say you know that there was a rebuild or modifications, or say if it's a transmission and you're very certain that this is the original oil, let us know the info you can gather on the back of the slip, as well as any suspicions of particular problems. Say if you think, well, this engine has probably been sitting for a very long time, Let me know if there are signs of corrosion. Very important for the aircraft world. But whatever it is, just let us know what you know in terms of recent work, problems that you may suspect, or if you're just looking for a general overview, that's fine too. We'll give you the rundown. That wraps up today's questions. I'm probably going to do another Q&A if I can group together more of these. These all fit together really nicely, so it was easy to bounce from one question to another. But if you have more, feel free to send them our way. Again, you can contact us on social media or send your questions to bstone@blackstone-labs.com. My name is Blackstone Joe. This wraps up episode 73. Thanks for listening.